Hey everyone, it's me Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with my TBR for the If You've Got It, Read It challenge that is taking place through the entire year of 2020. This was all put together by Megan and Sue over at Spinebreakers. They review a lot of horror and the adjacent genres over on their channel, and so I will leave a link below to that because they have the full list and they have all the like PDF files and everything for it. So if this challenge interests you, go ahead and take a look at their page. This is all about reading books that you have prior to 2020, books that you've owned prior to 2020. So there was one that I was like, oh, I'll put in this new release that I want to read, and I'm like, wait a second, that's not the point of this thing at all. So this is my TBR for that. There's 24 little challenges, and I think they made them broad enough so it was really easy to plug in things that I wanted to read anyways. So there's 24 of them, so you can just do like 2 a month and knock them out or whatever. So I will start now. We're starting. Okay. The first challenge is to read a book you've had on a TBR in the past, and there are so many I could do that for. But I chose Escape by Carolyn Jessup and Laura Palmer. This is a first-hand account of a young woman growing up in the FLDS sect of the Mormon church. And I know that this is going to be kind of a tough read. If you know anything about the FLDS church, they're the part of the LDS that believes in polygamy and child marriages and weird, creepy shit like that. So this is a first-hand account of a girl who grew up in the Mormon church, but the fundamentalist Mormons, not just the Mormon church. So I meant to read this in December and I didn't. So okay, the next challenge is read the book you've owned the longest, and I really had a hard time with this one because I don't own many of the books that I've owned for a long time anymore, because when I moved to California, I left so much shit in Minnesota, and like I literally had like 2 suitcases with my shit, and that's it. So I didn't get to pack many books, and the ones that I did pack I've read for the most part. But there's one that I'd really like to reread, and that is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. This is one that I used to read every few years, but recently it's been a while since I've read it. It's probably been like 6 years, and this is one of my favorites. It's hard to say a favorite of, you know, when I'm talking about one of the most prolific horror writers out there, it's hard to say like, oh, this is my favorite, but this is one of my favorites. And this is about a young girl named Trisha. If you don't know what this is about and you haven't read it, and she gets lost in the woods while hiking with her mom and her brother, and her only like connection to the world when she's in the woods is her little radio Walkman, and she listens to Red Sox games while she's out there, and that kind of like keeps her alive. So this is a great book. This is the first Stephen King book I ever read. This is the copy. So I've had this I've had this book since it came out. It was my mom's, but I stole it. So, sorry Mom. I think this means more to me than it does to you. The third challenge is to read something that's not a typical novel, and for this I picked a graphic novel. This is Gideon Falls Volume 2. I really loved the first one, and I don't want to let the series sit for too long in my brain, so I need to read the second one soon so I don't, you know, lose what's going on. The fourth challenge is to read your longest book, and I looked through a couple of them, but I think this is the longest that I haven't read. This is A Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin. I've read maybe 100 pages of this in 2019, and I kind of got burnt out on the series a little bit because I just read the 4th book before that, and so I need to get back into this. I'd really like to finish it and then wait forever for the 6th book. The next challenge is to read your shortest book, and for that I've picked Serial by Jack Kilbourne and Blake Crouch. This is a cool copy I have, it's signed by both the authors, and I can't remember where I got it. But it's just a very short little, I don't know, is this a novella? Is this a novelette? I'm not sure, but it is only 64 pages long, and I think that this is part of his series, but I can't remember for sure. The next challenge is to read a sequel, and for this I picked Bright We Burn by Kirsten White. This is the third and final book in the Conqueror saga. This is a story that's kind of like a gender swap of Vlad the Impaler. So it's like if Vlad was a young woman instead of a man. It takes these like political figures that were real people in history, and it kind of, I don't know, gives them life. And obviously it's fictional, but it's like fictional with these real people in history, which is kind of cool. And I've really, really loved the series so far. And I hope that this last book lives up to the first two. We'll have to see. It's been so good. I literally had goosebumps reading the last 3 pages of the second book. I can't remember what it's called. There's Andrew Dragon. What's the second one called? Now I Rise. That's what it was called. So, holy shit, it was crazy. And I hope I love this. Okay, the next challenge is to read a cover by, and for that I picked As Seen on TV by John Wayne Communale. This I saw on Amazon, I think. I was like looking for some other book, and this came up in the suggestions, and I was like, what is that? Because it looks like some weird like 90s cartoon. I don't know, something about that reminds me of like Rocko's Modern Life or something weird, but like creepy Rocko's Modern Life, creepier Rocko's Modern Life. And this is about a serial killer who is obsessed with As Seen on TV products, and he becomes obsessed with his next door neighbor because he thinks that maybe his next door neighbor is the reason why he hasn't been caught for his crimes. And that's all I really know about this. I think it's gonna be kind of weird. The next challenge is to read a book you bought on a friend's recommendation. This one's a little bit cheaty because I didn't actually buy it, but my sister-in-law just borrowed me Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I've heard a lot of things about this before. I wasn't sure if it was for me, but she thought that I would like it. So I'm going to try it, and I'm going to try to read it promptly and get it back to her like a normal human being, and not let it sit on my shelf for like 3 years and then be like, oh yeah, I haven't read that, and someone borrowed it to me, because I don't want to be that kind of trash baby. So this takes place in like a post-apocalyptic world. There is this traveling like Shakespearean troupe who puts on plays for people in camps, and I think she said it goes back and forth between like what happened before this epidemic, I'm assuming it's like a sickness, and the present day, like what's happening with the people in this troupe, and that's all I know about it. The next challenge is to read a book with your favorite color on the cover, and if you didn't think I would pick Inspection for this, who are you? This is my favorite color. It matches my stupid hair. And this is by Josh Malerman. I don't really know what this one's about. It came out last year, and I know that it's like kids with like letters for names, and there's like a boys' school and a girls' school, and the girls don't know that the boys exist and the boys don't know that the girls exist, and then I think like a boy and a girl end up meeting. And the 10th challenge is to read a book from your most owned genre, and that is definitely horror. So for that, I picked another Josh Malerman book. This is Black Mad Wheel, and this is about a has-been band that gets recruited by the military to investigate a weird sound in the African desert. I don't think I've seen anyone talk about this before, which is kind of weird because Josh Malerman is one of like those authors now that he's, you know, kind of popular since Bird Box came out. So have people just not read it? I don't know, but I'm interested in it. It seems like it might have a survival aspect that I like. The next challenge is to read a book that you've owned for so long that you can't remember the synopsis, and that is definitely The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. And I really like don't know what this is about. I've only had it for a couple years, but I don't think I had a full grasp of what it was about when I bought it. So like I definitely don't remember now. And I kind of want to keep it that way until I read it. Is that okay with you guys? That I don't tell you the synopsis? I mean, I feel like I do that all the time. So, I don't know. The blurb says, a gothic horror story of quite exceptional quality, macabre, bizarre, and quite impossible to put down. But that was written by the Financial Times, and do they blurb books a lot? That's kind of weird. That's the Wasp Factory. The next challenge is to read a book by one of your favorite authors. This was the one I was like, oh, I'll put in Grady Hendrix's new book. But then I was like, wait. The point is to read books that you already own, not ones that you're going to buy. So instead I picked Made for Love by Alyssa Nutting. I've only read one of her books so far, so I'm not entirely sure that she's one of my favorite authors, but I think she has the potential to be. So I'm reading this one to maybe solidify that she is one of my favorite authors. Hopefully she will be, because I really, really like Tampa, and this one seems absolutely bananas. It's about a woman who moves in with her kind of elderly, widowed dad and his real-life sex doll. So it seems wacky and weird and uncomfortable and not a situation I would want to be in, and I hope I love this. The next challenge is to read a book by an author you've never read before, and that was so easy because there's so many on my shelves that I haven't read before. But for this one I picked Twins by Barry Wood and Jack Giesland. I've never read anything from either of these authors, but I'm more trying to get a feel of what Barry Wood is like, I guess, because I have another one of his books, The Tribe, that I haven't read. This is a book about doctors who are twins, and that's all the synopsis really tells us. And I don't want to go hunting too far because you know me and my weird synopsis thing, but this cover is so weird. I'm definitely reading this for a trope video I plan on doing into the year. So there's a couple books like this that I have found recently that I'm like, these all kind of share a characteristic that I like, and I don't know if this will be good either, but I'd like to read it. The next challenge is to read your most recently purchased book, and I can't remember for sure which one was like the last one that I bought, but this is one I purchased in December. This is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and all I know about this really is that this is about Gideon, who is some sort of like necromancer. And it sounds really cool and dark and weird and like fantastical, and I'd really like to read it. The 15th challenge is to read your most recently published book, and I didn't hunt a ton for this, but I think the last book that I pre-ordered was The Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is another one that I totally meant to get to. I think it came out in October, and I just never did. This is about some like secret college societies. I don't know very much about it at all, and I think people have liked this. The next challenge is to read your least recently published book, and this one was kind of hard because there were a couple that I thought were kind of old and weren't as old as I thought they were. But I settled on The October Country by Ray Bradbury. This is like short stories, so some of them were published obviously like more recently than others. But the oldest story in this collection was published in, I believe, 1943. So we're gonna go with this. I think this will be something that I save till October to read. The next challenge is to read a nonfiction book, and for this I picked one that I already wanted to read in the coming months. This is The Indifferent Stars Above. This is written by Daniel James Brown, and this is an account of the Donner Party expedition tragedy. The Donner Party, if you didn't know, were a group of people who tried to take a shortcut through the mountains while they were heading west in 1846, and they got caught in the snow in the mountains, and some of the people died, and the survivors had to survive on their dead crewmates' bodies. They ate them. So This is a pretty bananas story, one that really interests me, so I'm excited to read something that I've heard is a good account of it. The next challenge is to read a book that was gifted to you, and I really don't get gifted books that often, which kind of makes me sad, but maybe people just like don't know what to get me because I already have a lot of books, or because I read a lot of different things. I don't know. But this one was from Zach. He got this for me, I don't know, maybe like Mother's Day one year. But this is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I started this one and I put it down. I can't remember why I put it down. This is one that I'd like to finish because it was a gifted book, and I've had it for like 2 years, I think. And maybe that's why people don't get me books, because I never fucking read them. Even if I think I'm gonna like them. I don't know. I don't know what my problem is. But this is like a dystopian world. They have people called scythes. And their society has developed so that people don't really die of old age anymore. So the scythes kind of come to reap people, and it'll be like, this many people need to die this way, and this many people need to die this way, because otherwise the population is just going to get out of control. So every now and then they need new scythes, and that's kind of what the story follows, is these two recruits, and they don't get to choose to be recruits, they are just recruited. So it was interesting when I read it, and I can't remember why I put it down. I'd like to finish this so I can be like, look, I finished a book you bought me. You can buy me books. Okay, number 19 is to read a book you meant to read last year. For that I picked The Toll by Sherry Priest. This seems like it's going to be super weird because it's about this bridge, and let's see what it... Let me just read the synopsis, because I think the synopsis tells it pretty well. It says, State Road 177 runs along the Suwannee River between Fargo, Georgia and the Okefenokee Swamp. Drive that route east to west and you'll cross 6 bridges. Take it from west to east and you might find 7, but you'd better hope not. So this is about a couple who finds that 7th bridge on accident, and I don't know, this seems so weird and like kind of like those weird areas of our country, or you know, something like the Bermuda Triangle or the Bridgewater Triangle, stuff like that, that interests me. So I'm hoping that maybe this will be something like about something like that, and I feel like this is a good book to read for the summer, so I think I'm gonna save it for when it gets a little bit hotter this year, which will be like in 2 months where I live. Kill me. Number 20 is to randomly pick a book off your TBR, and last night when I was making this TBR, I used a random number generator to generate a random number. I think I have like a little under 1,000 books, so I just put in like 1,000, and it came up with the number 543, which kind of sucks. That's like right in the middle, and I had to count off all those fucking books. But I landed on The Girl in the Box by Ouida Sebastian, I think is how you say her name. And this is like a vintage like YA thriller, and it's about this young girl who's like held captive, so I feel like that's come up a lot in my books lately. The next challenge is to read a book that reminds you of someone, and for this one I've picked Lord Fowl's Bane by Stephen R. Donaldson. This reminds me of my dad because he bought this for me when we were on vacation once. I don't get to see my family a whole ton because they live in Minnesota and I don't. This is the first book in a trilogy, I believe, and it's got like magic and heretics and shit like that, I think. But I thought it was funny. At the very end of the synopsis it says, "Thus begins one of the most remarkable epic fantasies ever written," and I think that that's pretty bold, okay, but I'm willing to give it a try. Number 22 is to read a book you bought because of the online book community. This is definitely Nevernight by Jay Kristoff, because I had never read any of Jay Kristoff's books before I picked this up. Since then I've read one that he wrote with Amy Kaufman, and I thought it was okay. But I think that this one is definitely more in my wheelhouse. It's about a woman named Mia who is training to be an assassin, something like that. But I really love everything that like this book looks like it's about. I mean, the cover is awesome. She's got a bloody dagger and gloves and like a creepy mask on, and she's an assassin, and I just really want to love this. I've heard so many good things about this on book social media, so I'm really hoping that this is one that lives up to the hype, because I want to love it. Okay, second to last question. This was to have someone else pick out a book for you, and I asked Zach to do this, and I swear to God this was coincidental. I left the room so he wouldn't feel any pressure. I said you can pick any, you don't have to make it horror, and he's like, I don't even know where your horror books are. So I was like, okay, perfect. And he ended up picking The Ship of Theseus by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst, and he had no idea that I was planning on reading this soon. He picked it because he thought it looked cool, because it fucking does. So this is what I'm gonna read for that challenge. I don't really know what this is about. It's like a woman who finds a book, and it's got all this weird stuff inside of it, and she starts writing in the margins, and I think like somebody else is also writing in it, but I'm not really sure how that works. Like, did she find this at a library? Like, are other people checking it out? Or like, does she own it in her home? Because that would be super creepy. But I want to get to the bottom of it. And it's got all these weird things inside. Oops, like weird postcards and like notes. I think I'm gonna have to like make a catalog of what goes where, just in case something falls out, because that would really make me sad. See, it looks super cool, and I'm gonna read it, and I think I'm gonna do a vlog, but I'm not sure if people would like a vlog that like maybe has some spoilers, or a vlog that doesn't have any spoilers at all. So if that interests you, let me know what format you'd like that in. And last but not least is to read a book that you predict will be 5 stars. So I took this right off of my 5-star prediction pile. This is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. I don't really know much about this. It's a thriller, so I don't want to read the synopsis. But I'm assuming it's some sort of like domestic thriller, because wives. So that is my TBR for If You've Got It, Read It. Let me know in the comments if you've also filmed a TBR for this, because I'd really love to see what other people are including in their picks. This will help me with one of my reading goals for this year too, so stay tuned for that video, I guess. Actually, I don't know what order I'm going to put these up in, so maybe you've already seen it. I don't know. But thank you for watching anyways, and I will see you guys later.